One of the most iconic parts of a superhero costume is the underwear above the tights. But the second most important part is the cape. All cool superheroes wear a cape, and that's a fact. So let's make one. For my Mary Marvel, Lady Shazam, Mary Bromfield, or whatever you want to call her, I am using a regular white fabric that's stretchy on both sides. In my opinion, the type of fabric you use for a cape is irrelevant. You can use whatever you want. I put them folded on the floor with the good sides facing each other, so bad side is up. This is so I can draw my patterns on there. To make the pattern, you will need 3 measurements. The first one is from your spine or just the middle of your neck until the end of your shoulder. The second one is from the middle of your neck until your wrist. And the last one is however long you want your cape to be. It's quite hard to measure by yourself, so go grab your house elf to help you out. I am signaling 10 because I wanted to voice over and say I would take the length of my dress and add 10 centimeters. I did that and it looked like shit, so don't do that. Instead of adding 10 centimeters to the length, I added 30. It's easier to make something shorter, so better be safe than sorry. These were my measurements, but incorrect because I changed them afterwards. And here's also how the pattern will sort of look like. The measurement until your shoulder is the top one. The width on the bottom is the measurement you made until your wrist. And then, of course, there's the length. If you also want to add a hood on your cape, this is what the pattern will look like. The 20 cm at the bottom is the same length as the one from your spine till your shoulder. The other measurements are just estimates. Mary Marvel's hood fits very loose, so I made one that's very big. It says 50 centimeters, but eventually I did make it shorter so it would fit better. Next, just draw your pattern onto your fabric and make sure the length is on the fold so it'll be one big piece. One thing I did change but didn't film is the length of the diagonal. You can just cut your pattern out like that, but then the sides will be a lot longer than the middle part of your cape. I don't know why, so I just made the sides 10 centimeters shorter. This makes the bottom look rounder and it just looks better. For the neckline, I just cut a small quarter of a circle out the top in the middle. I didn't measure it, I just assumed that if it wasn't big enough, I could always make it bigger. Okay, so if you cut it out, it will look something like this. Your regular superhero cape is done. You can just sew it onto your costume, hem the edges if you want, and that's it. Mary, however, has an emblem on her cape in the front, so I will make 2 extra patterns that will come together in the middle so I can hang the emblem on it. To do this, I just took the width of the shoulders and make a triangle that was 15 centimeters long. I didn't measure this, I just guessed. If you want it to be more accurate, you can measure the length from your shoulder to your chest, and then it looks like this. I just cut away pieces that looked too big. My result looked something like this. Now, the patterns are pinned together. The next step is just sewing them together with a regular straight stitch. I also added some Velcro pieces on the front pieces, so I can easily put the cape on and take it off. Then it will look like this. The next step is creating the hood. I drew my pattern on some folded fabric. I made sure the back of the hood was on the fold. I then cut it out and stitched the top part together. I forgot to film this part, but I hemmed the edges of the neckline of the cape by just turning them over to the bad side and sewing over it with a straight stitch. I did the same for the bottom side of the hood. If you have no idea what I mean with this, you can go watch my sewing tutorial or look at this weird video I made. Okay, then I pinned the hood on the neckline of the cape. I started pinning in the middle, so the middle of the cape was exactly on the middle of the hood. I then just continued until I ran out of space and stitched it together. This is the result. If it's too big, you can just cut pieces off and stitch it again. The next step is adding gold to the hood and the bottom of the cape. Depending on your type of fabric, this can either be really easy or absolute hell. I know because it was absolute hell for me. My fabric was some type of stretchy fabric looking thingy, which always like props up in the sewing machine. Very annoying. So if your fabric is like that as well, sometimes it's just easier to sew by hand than by machine. To start this step, I made the golden strips that were 10 centimeters longer than the size of the hood, and I made them about 15 centimeters wide. I sewed one of the strips onto the hood like we did on the dress. Because I wanted the inside of the hood to have gold as well, I pinned the second strip right sides together on the inside and stitched it onto the seam allowance of the hood and the first golden strip. To pin the two golden strips together, I folded the top parts in a little and pinned them together. To do this, it's best to do it on your knee so it's rounded, and always check both sides so they both look good. When sewing, make sure you use a zigzag stitch if your fabric is stretchy. I make it sound easy, but this alone took me 2 days. Now, this is what it looks like when it's all stitched together. You can see the gold on the outside and inside, and it looks really pretty. One thing I did change was the gold on the front of the cape. I cut it in an angle so it was a little smaller. That's an optional step. The next thing I want to do is hem the edges of the cape. I did this by folding them double and pinning them. That way the inside of the cape looks good as well, because that's what people will see if they stand right before you. To sew it, I used a zigzag stitch on the biggest mode, and it will look something like this. The last step is adding gold on the bottom of the cape, the same way we did it on the hood. So I cut 2 strips of gold that were 10 centimeters longer than the actual bottom of the cape. I pinned and sewed one strip on the outside and one on the inside. Again, make sure you always pin the good sides together. So for the back of the cape, it means the actual back and the actual gold. For the inside of the cape, that means the actual inside and the gold. After sewing it, it will look something like this. Again, now we need to stitch the gold sides together. Make sure the edges are folded double, and then stitch them together with a zigzag stitch. If necessary, you can cut away excess fabric that's on the inside of the gold. And then the cape is done. Mary Marvel is like a gold circle in the front of her cape, so to make that I used 5mm foam. I drew a circle of whatever size you want. When cutting it out, make sure you hold your knife in an angle like this. It will give the emblem that ball effect, sort of. After cutting it out, we use our multi-tool kit or Dremel again to make it more smooth. On the edges, I made little cuts and used my heat gun to open them up. Just like the armor, I used 2 layers of flex bond as a primer, and I made sure to leave an hour in between the layers. After the second layer, I waited several hours to paint. For painting, I did 4 layers of gold and mixed the gold with black to give shadows to the cuts. To make it wearable, you can glue an elastic on some other fabric on the back, large enough that it will fit over the velcro of the cape. And that's it! Here is the final look. I hope everything is clear, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask them down below. Thank you so much for watching and have a very nice day. Bye bye!